During our divorce hearing, my wife walked in pregnant, smiling like she'd already won. She claimed it was mine, said I was trying to abandon my new family. The judge was about to speak, until I stood and said, "Your Honor, I've had a vasectomy since 2018. Her smile dropped. Her lawyer asked for a break. Now she's calling me 43 times a day. Before we start, I just want to say thank you for being here. It means the world. But take a look at this. Only 8% of people watching are subscribed. If you enjoy these stories and want to support more of them, just one click makes a huge difference." Burner account and names changed for obvious reasons. There's something surreal about sitting in a courtroom watching the person you once loved try to systematically destroy your life with a smile on their face. Even more surreal when they're using an unborn child as ammunition. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Some context. My soon-to-be ex-wife Tara and I were married for 7 years. We met in 2013, married in 2014, and things were good at first. Great, even. We both had promising careers, me in software engineering, her in corporate marketing. We traveled, renovated a house together, had the same vision of success. No kids, which became a major point of contention about 3 years into our marriage. I was diagnosed with a genetic condition that carries a 50% chance of being passed to biological children. The condition causes progressive nerve damage starting in mid-adulthood. I watched my father deteriorate from it, becoming wheelchair-bound by 50. I'm 36 now and already showing early symptoms, occasional numbness in my extremities, some balance issues. Not exactly something I wanted to risk passing down. When I received the diagnosis in early 2017, I was devastated. I remember sitting in the neurologist's office, holding the genetic test results while he explained what I was facing. That night, I told Tara everything. The prognosis, the hereditary nature, my fears about having biological children. "We have options," I said, holding her hands across our kitchen table. "Adoption, fostering, or even being child-free and focusing on our careers and travel." She squeezed my hands, tears in her eyes. "We'll figure it out together. Your health comes first right now." For almost a year, things were good. We researched adoption agencies. We spent time with our nieces and nephews. We seemed to be on the same page, or so I thought. Then around March 2018, things changed. Tara started making comments about how genetics aren't everything, and how medical science is advancing all the time. She'd leave fertility clinic brochures around the house. When I reiterated my stance, she'd get upset. "You're denying me a chance at motherhood," she said during one particularly heated argument in our bedroom. She'd thrown a fertility clinic brochure at me. "There are tests they can do, ways to screen embryos. The testing isn't 100% accurate," I replied, trying to stay calm. "And even if it was, I don't want to risk it. Why is adoption suddenly off the table?" She turned away, arms crossed. "It's not the same. I want to experience pregnancy. I want a child that's part of us." The arguments escalated over the next few months. I'd come home to find her watching birthing videos or browsing baby furniture online. When I'd remind her of our discussions, she'd either cry or lash out. Then came the incident in July 2018 that changed everything. I was looking for a receipt on our shared laptop when I discovered she'd been tampering with our birth control. There were searches on how to poke holes in condoms without leaving obvious damage, and calendar entries tracking her cycle with notes about when to forget her birth control pills. My blood ran cold when I found a forum open in her browser history where she was asking for advice on how to get pregnant when husband doesn't want kids. Someone had actually suggested getting him drunk enough that he wouldn't notice if protection wasn't used. Even worse, Tara had replied, "That might work. He rarely remembers details when he drinks whiskey." I sat there for hours, reading through weeks of her posts, feeling physically ill. This wasn't just a disagreement anymore. This was a fundamental breach of trust and bodily autonomy. I couldn't believe the woman I married would plot something like this. When Tara got home that evening, I confronted her with what I'd found. I'll never forget how quickly her expression changed, from shock at being discovered to a kind of desperate justification. "You're overreacting," she said, pacing our living room. "I was just venting online." "Venting? You were actively planning to trick me into fatherhood." I was shaking with anger and betrayal. That's when she broke down crying, collapsing onto our couch. I'm desperate. I'm turning 35 next year. My biological clock is ticking while you keep stalling. I'm not stalling. I have a genetic disease. We discussed this. You'd come around once a baby was on the way, she insisted, wiping her tears. You'd love our child no matter what. I just need to help you see what you really want. I slept in the guest room that night, unable to even look at her. The next morning, I called my doctor and made an appointment for a vasectomy consultation. I didn't tell Tara, not out of spite, but out of self-protection. I couldn't trust her anymore, and I needed to ensure I wouldn't be forced into parenthood against my will. The procedure happened in September 2017, while Tara was on a weekend trip with her sister. The doctor understood my situation and was supportive, especially given my genetic condition. I took a few days off work, telling Tara I had a project deadline and would be busy anyway. The recovery was quick, some ice packs and mild discomfort, nothing major. I planned to tell her after she returned and suggest marriage counseling to work through our fundamental disconnect. But the night she came home from her trip, she blindsided me with a bombshell of her own. I think we should separate, she said over dinner, not even meeting my eyes. I've already talked to a divorce attorney. I was stunned. Just like that? No counseling, no trying to work through this? What's there to work through? You won't give me children, and I can't waste my fertile years on someone who won't change his mind. She said it so coldly, like she'd rehearsed it. I didn't mention the vasectomy then. It seemed pointless since we were apparently heading for divorce anyway. We spent the next few weeks discussing logistics, how to split assets, who would move out. It was civil but tense. Then, inexplicably, in November 2018, about 2 months after she'd first mentioned divorce, Tara wanted to reconcile. She showed up at the apartment I'd been renting with takeout from our favorite restaurant and tears in her eyes. I've been thinking, she said as we sat awkwardly at my tiny kitchen table. Maybe I can accept a child-free marriage if that's what it takes to save us. We built a life together, Drew. I don't want to throw that away. I was suspicious but willing to try. 7 years together isn't something you discard easily. We agreed to counseling, and I moved back into our house in December 2018. For almost 10 months, things seemed better. We went to weekly therapy. We reconnected physically and emotionally. I nearly told her about the vasectomy several times, but the right moment never materialized. As time passed, it became an increasingly difficult topic to broach, especially as things were finally improving between us. Then in September 2019, while Tara was in the shower, her phone kept buzzing with text notifications. Normally I'd never check her messages, but after the birth control incident, I still had lingering trust issues. I glanced at her screen and saw messages from Mark W. with preview text that made my stomach drop. Miss you too, baby. Can't wait until. I knew Mark Wilson was her boss. Against my better judgment, I opened the messages. What I found shattered any hope of saving our marriage. Not only were they having an affair, but based on their conversation history, it had been going on for over 2 years, since early 2017, before my diagnosis, before all our fertility arguments. I scrolled back through months of messages, putting together the timeline. Their affair had continued through all our struggles about having children, through her threatening divorce, and even through our reconciliation. The reconciliation, I discovered, coincided perfectly with Mark temporarily relocating to the London office for a 9-month project. She'd essentially put me on hold while he was unavailable. When Tara emerged from the shower, I was sitting on the bed with her phone in my hand. How long have you been sleeping with Mark? I asked quietly. The color drained from her face. Drew, I can explain. 2 years, Tara. 2 years? You were sleeping with him while making me feel like a monster for not wanting children. My voice broke. You threatened divorce when I wouldn't give you a baby, then came back when he left the country. Was any of it real? She didn't deny it. Instead, she tried to justify it. Mark understood her desire for children. Mark would have given her a family. Mark appreciated her in ways I didn't. I filed for divorce the next day, October 2019. This time, there was no turning back. The proceedings were contentious from the start. She wanted the house I'd largely paid for. I'd made the down payment with an inheritance from my grandmother, half my retirement account, and substantial alimony despite having a good job herself. Her lawyer painted me as cold and uncaring, citing my refusal to have children as evidence of my selfish nature. 4 months into the divorce process, in February 2020, came the hearing that would determine temporary asset allocation while the divorce proceeded. I arrived early with my lawyer, Sam Davidson, reviewing our documentation one last time in the hallway outside the courtroom. "We're in good shape," Sam assured me. "Your financial records clearly show your contributions to the marital assets. The judge assigned to our case is fair, but no nonsense." That's when I saw her walking down the hallway toward the courtroom, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. Tara was visibly pregnant. Not just slightly showing, she had to be at least 6 months along, her belly prominently displayed in a form-fitting dress I'd never seen before. She made deliberate eye contact with me as she approached, cradling her stomach with both hands, a triumphant smile playing at her lips. Sam grabbed my arm. "Did you know about this?" "No," I managed, still staring. "Impossible. We haven't been together since." "Pull yourself together," Sam whispered urgently. "Don't react. That's exactly what she wants." We entered the courtroom, taking our places at the respondents' table. My mind was racing, calculating dates. If she was that far along, the timing couldn't possibly match our separation. Unless, had she been pregnant during our reconciliation period and hidden it somehow? No, that didn't make sense either. Judge Harriet Winters entered, and we all rose. After the preliminaries, Tara's lawyer, a slick-looking man named Bennett, immediately addressed the court. "Your Honor, before we proceed, we'd like to amend our petition in light of recent developments." He gestured toward Tara. "As you can see, Mrs. Harmon is expecting. This significantly changes the financial considerations in this case." Judge Winters raised an eyebrow, looking between Tara and me, clearly noting Tara's advanced pregnancy. "I don't see any amended petition in my files, Counselor." "We'll be filing the formal amendment this week," Bennett replied smoothly. Given the advanced stage of Mrs. Harmon's pregnancy and today's scheduled hearing, we felt it important to bring this to the court's attention immediately. Tara placed her hand protectively over her belly, her expression angelically concerned. Bennett continued, his voice taking on an accusatory tone. "Mr. Harmon has not only been attempting to divest himself of financial responsibility to his wife, but is now attempting to abandon his responsibilities to his unborn child." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Sam scribbled furiously on his legal pad, "Paternity test ASAP." The judge turned toward me, her expression noticeably cooler. "Mr. Harmon, were you aware of this pregnancy?" Before I could answer, Bennett interjected, "Your Honor, he was aware. Mrs. Harmon informed him during their last attempt at reconciliation, which we believe precipitated his abrupt filing for divorce." That was a bold-faced lie. Sam stood immediately to object, but Tara's lawyer wasn't finished. "Furthermore, this pregnancy has complicated Mrs. Harmon's health, requiring her to reduce her work hours significantly. She's been diagnosed with gestational hypertension. This further necessitates adequate support from Mr. Harmon, who has shown callous disregard for his new family." Tara dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, the picture of a wounded, expectant mother. "I just want what's best for our baby," she said softly, but loud enough to carry. The judge sighed, looking at me with thinly veiled contempt. "Mr. Harmon, given these new circumstances?" That's when I stood up. Sam tugged at my sleeve, but I gently shook him off. "Your Honor, with all due respect, I've had a vasectomy since August 2018. The courtroom went completely silent. Tara's triumphant smile froze, then crumbled in real time. Her lawyer looked at her sharply, confusion evident in his expression. "I have my medical records here," I continued, retrieving a folder from my briefcase. I'd started carrying the documentation after the divorce proceedings began, not because I expected this exact scenario, but because I wanted a complete record of my medical situation, including my choice not to have children, as well as 2 follow-up sperm count tests confirming the procedure's success. "I am not the father of that child." Tara's lawyer stood up, clearly flustered. "Your Honor, my client was not made aware of any such procedure. This is clearly a desperate attempt by Mr. Harmon to evade responsibility." Judge Winters held up her hand. "Let me see those records, please." I handed the folder to the bailiff, who brought it to the judge. She carefully examined each document. The procedure was performed by Dr. Levinson at Mercy Medical Center on August 10, 2018, I explained. I have the records and receipts. I also have documentation of my genetic condition which prompted this decision, polycystic neuropathy, the same condition that caused my father's early death. Tara was visibly shaking now, her face ashen. Bennett leaned over to whisper something to her, but she jerked away from him. "These appear to be in order," Judge Winters said after a moment. "Mrs. Harmon, were you aware of this procedure?" Tara stood, one hand still protectively cradling her belly. He never told me. He couldn't have. We were still intimate after that date." "The procedure doesn't affect that aspect of function, Your Honor," I explained quietly. "Only fertility. And yes, we were intimate during our reconciliation period, which began in November 2018, 3 months after my vasectomy." Her lawyer quickly requested a 15-minute recess, which the judge granted. As they huddled in fierce conversation at the far side of the courtroom, Sam looked at me with a mixture of relief and exasperation. "A heads up would have been nice," he muttered. "This could have gone south quickly if your records weren't in order." "I didn't know she'd pull this," I replied, still processing the absurdity of the situation. "I never thought she'd try to pass off another man's child as mine in court." "Who do you think?" Sam left the question hanging. "Her boss, Mark. They've been having an affair for years." When the session resumed, Tara and her lawyer had clearly recalibrated their approach. Bennett adopted a completely different tone, claiming emotional distress due to my secretive medical procedure and arguing it constituted its own form of marital misconduct. "Your Honor, while my client may have been mistaken about the paternity of her child, the underlying issue remains Mr. Harmon's deception. He underwent a major medical procedure affecting their marital relationship without informing his wife." Judge Winters was having none of it. "Counselor, attempting to attribute paternity of another man's child to Mr. Harmon is a serious matter. Your client just testified under oath that this child is her husband's, which we've now established is biologically impossible. I suggest you confer with your client about the implications of perjury before proceeding further." She turned to address both parties. "Given these developments, we will postpone today's hearing on temporary asset allocation. Mr. Bennett, you have 48 hours to submit a revised petition that accurately reflects your client's circumstances. Mr. Davidson, you may file a response within 72 hours thereafter." As she stood to leave, she added, "And Mrs. Harmon, I strongly advise you to be forthright in all future filings with this court. Attempting to mislead the court about paternity is grounds for sanctions." As I gathered my things, I caught Tara glaring at me with naked hatred. Her lawyer was still whispering urgently to her, but her eyes never left mine. The mask of wounded expectant mother had completely fallen away, replaced by the look of someone whose carefully constructed plan had just spectacularly backfired. In the hallway outside, she tried to approach me, mascara streaking down her face. "Drew, please let me explain." Her lawyer intercepted her, physically steering her toward the exit while whispering something that made her stop struggling. "That was 3 days ago. Since then, my phone has been blowing up. 43 calls from Tara, countless texts ranging from tearful apologies to vicious accusations. She's claimed alternately that I tricked her by getting the vasectomy, that the baby might miraculously be mine despite the procedure, and finally, in her most recent messages, that she made a horrible mistake, but we could still work things out and be a family if I would just talk to her. Her boss, Mark, the affair partner and likely father, has apparently gone completely silent since she told him about the courtroom revelation. According to a mutual friend who works at their company, he's suddenly taken a personal leave from the firm and cleared his schedule for the next month. The following week brought more developments. Tara's lawyer formally withdrew from representing her. Apparently, he hadn't been informed about the pregnancy deception beforehand and wanted no part in continuing as her counsel after being blindsided in court. She quickly hired new representation, a lawyer with a reputation for aggressive tactics, but significantly less respected in legal circles. My lawyer filed for an expedited divorce process based on the attempted fraud, which the judge granted. Instead of the year-long process we were expecting, we received a final hearing date just 6 weeks out. 2 days before that final hearing, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment, Tara's sister Claire. We'd always gotten along well, and she'd stayed neutral during the initial separation. "I owe you an apology," she said as she sat stiffly on my couch. "Tara told me you knew about the baby and were abandoning her." I believed her. "What changed?" I asked, offering her coffee, which she declined. "She finally admitted everything to me yesterday. The affair with Mark, trying to trick you into having children during your marriage, deliberately getting pregnant by Mark while planning to pass the child off as yours for the divorce settlement." Claire shook her head, disgusted. "She calculated that if the court thought the baby was yours, she'd secure much more favorable terms and ongoing support." "And Mark?" I asked. "He wants nothing to do with her now. Apparently, he never wanted children either, one of the reasons she was having problems with both of you. When your lawyer sent his attorney the court transcripts." She trailed off. "Let's just say he's not stepping up." "I'm sorry she dragged you into this," I said, and meant it. Claire had always been kind to me. "I'm the one who's sorry," she replied. "I should have seen who she really was sooner." The final divorce hearing was mercifully straightforward. With Tara's deception exposed and documented, the judge was unsympathetic to her demands. She received no alimony, only her fair share of our joint assets acquired during the marriage. I kept the house, refinancing to remove her name and buying out her portion of the equity, my retirement accounts, and my grandmother's heirloom jewelry she'd tried to claim. As we left the courtroom for the last time, Tara, now heavily pregnant, attempted one final plea. "Drew, please," she said, catching my arm. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but this baby needs a father." I gently removed her hand. "I'm sure Mark will come around once the paternity test confirms what everyone already knows." "He won't," she whispered. "He's relocated to the Singapore office." "Then I'm sorry for your situation, but it's not my responsibility to fix it. I wish you and your child well, Tara, but our chapter is closed. It's been 6 months since the divorce was finalized. I've heard through mutual friends that Tara gave birth to a healthy baby boy and has moved back to her hometown to live with her parents. Mark apparently provides financial support, but remains in Singapore with no plans to return. As for me, I'm focusing on my health and future. I've started treatment for my condition with a specialist who's optimistic about new therapies that might slow the progression. I've kept the house, but renovated it extensively, removing all traces of my life with Tara and making it fully accessible for when my symptoms eventually worsen. The most unexpected positive outcome has been connecting with a support group for people with my condition. Through them, I've met others who chose not to have biological children for the same reason I did. For the first time, I don't feel defensive about that choice, just at peace with it. Sometimes I think about how differently things might have turned out if Tara and I had been honest with each other from the beginning, if I'd told her about the vasectomy immediately, if she'd been upfront about her unwillingness to consider alternatives to biological children, if she hadn't been carrying on an affair behind my back. But dwelling on what-ifs is pointless. The most valuable lesson from this whole experience is the importance of living authentically, even when it's difficult. No more hiding, no more compromising on fundamental values, no more relationships built on deception and manipulation. My life isn't perfect. My medical prognosis remains challenging, and some days the physical symptoms are frightening. But there's an overwhelming sense of rightness to my world now, a foundation of truth that was missing during those years of marriage. Sometimes the happiest ending isn't what you initially pictured for yourself. Sometimes it's just the quiet satisfaction of standing in your truth when it matters most, even if that means standing alone.